Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew, Keith Johnson.
I am too beautiful to bear.
Alan Seiler.
Oh, I didn't prepare for that. I don't have a funny quote.
And Veronica Dashel.
Hi.
And this is a belated celebration for us. We just crossed our 60th episode last week. And, you know, our tradition on the show is that every 20 episodes, we'll go through the 20th episode of each of the Star Trek series and compare and contrast them and see what that random selection of episodes looks like and how the series are progressing. And so tonight, we're going to be talking about the 60th episode of each of the Star Trek series that has gotten that far. Starting with is in there... What's the first one, Keith?
Original series.
You would mess them up.
I know.
Is there in truth no beauty?
Perfect.
So when Chuck was reading off the list, I was like, oh, that's the one that Keith always talks about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you always mention.
Well, it's come up a lot over the last few weeks because you have Zero, the Medusan, now on Prodigy. And so I had just rewatched this like 6 months ago before Prodigy came out.
Yeah,
to sort of refresh my memory on the Medusans. And this is an episode where like all the cool weird stuff sticks in my mind, and the stuff I don't care for so much, I'm surprised again every time I watch it. Because there's some stuff in this that really doesn't work.
Yeah, well, let's start with that. What do you think doesn't work?
I think that if someone comes to your work for business and you stand up in the meeting and say, I just want to mention how beautiful you are.
Oh, I know.
The most beautiful person. Like, you imagine that meeting, like you would be escorted out, you know, like that would be.
Like, I feel like that would even happen in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like
HR
if there's a
is
secretary in there
you.
taking the notes and someone stands up and just starts talking about how beautiful she is.
How did the men of Earth let you get away? Like, calm down. This is a place of work here.
Right.
Well, one of the things is, and this is something even as a kid I've always wondered about. It's a weird term. Does the term "ugly," quote unquote, really apply to what Medusans are? When I was a kid, I cannot remember to save my life. Yeah, I was a kid. I read a science fiction story, and I cannot remember what it was to save my life. But long story short, a woman was born with a natural ability to phase into another dimension. Or no, the United States government created a machine that could phase into another dimension, like fourth or fifth dimension. And because our perceptions were nothing like that, you would go mad just seeing that dimension. And I always assumed the Medusans were not, because ugly is such a weird term. I always assumed like they were some kind of other dimensional beings or something that our minds couldn't comprehend, almost like in TNG when they created that weird mathematical pattern that they were going to use to kill the Borg because their processors couldn't process it.
Right.
So I think to you guys' point, they were really leaning into how beautiful she was versus how ugly Kolos was, and it was really heavy-handed. That part.
Yeah, it was, and it didn't serve the characters well.
No.
And I've attributed it a lot of times. I attribute it to just sexism of the day. Like it was just a really badly written episode. But this episode was, I was reading about it this week, was written by a lady who was a fan and a librarian. And she submitted some scripts to Star Trek, and her two writing credits are Star Trek scripts. And now I mean, I don't know if it's maybe she was rewritten. That did happen quite a bit. But I mean, also there was a phenomenon in sort of fan fiction writing, particularly back then, of her that self-insert character. Famously the Mary Sue character from the fan films or fan of fiction. And so I'm wondering too, I mean, you have Miranda Jones who comes on the ship and everyone's in love with her and everyone's going crazy over her. You know what I mean?
Right.
There could be some of that as well. So I don't know who to blame, but I ain't care for it.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the time, you know? I mean, I think even though it was a woman writing it and a woman who was a fan, I think that she's writing for what television was doing at that time.
Sure.
And certainly Star Trek, you know, and I don't think
it's
Star
not
Trek,
usually this blatant though.
I don't
at
know.
times, but
I don't know. I mean, yeah. I first of all, I just want to say hello to all the people who are watching. Hi, people.
Hi.
Hello.
If you have
Tell
any
us that you're here.
Hush. If you have any comments or questions, drop them in the comments thingy and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. Okay, now Veronica, you can say whatever you want.
I was gonna say, tell us that you're here, but then
I
I
know,
had to tell Chuck to get into the comments because he's on the private chat right now.
What are you talking about?
Look at the comments. There you go.
All right.
Hey, there's someone here. Woohoo!
Hey.
No, wait, that's StreamYard.
Hey, okay.
Facebook there's Facebook users here.
Is that
awesome?
Chuck?
No.
Oh, hey. Hi, Facebook user.
Hey, Facebook user.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Okay.
StreamYard is weird.
Back to the discussion.
Okay.
Where were we?
You know what? I like how Ralph Sinesky directed this. And
yes.
the things that I always remember about this episode is just how weird and like the strange editing and the like fisheye lens stuff when he's going crazy, and the weird way things are cut together when like it's like descending into madness in the end. And that's the part of this episode that I do like, that I think works really well.
Yeah,
and I love when Carlos is in Spock's body, and that always stuck with me since I was a kid, when he was marveling at the simplicity of human speech,
right?
And yet how much we rely on it, and yet are any of you really its master? I think that's just some really well written stuff, and that's the part of the episode that I like, and I tend to fast forward when the other parts are going on.
Yeah, I think that like almost every single episode of the original series, there's something I can take from it. Like you said, something philosophically and scientifically. And the word ugly troubles me, but I'm just going to think they're meaning other, like other dimensional or something. But the concept of a being or a creature that exists such that the human mind can't comprehend it and will drive you mad was really fascinating. And the other thing that I think is really fascinating is the energy barrier came back up again. And
that's right.
Yeah, Lawrence took them through the barrier. It was so weird. I also thought it was really cool that they were exceeding warp 8, warp 9, and kept on going. And so they went back to the barrier. So I thought it was really cool. They mentioned the distortion that they encountered and how cool it was that Kolos, within like 30 seconds, got him back. And Chekhov even said, "We're so close, the difference is not even worth mentioning." So I thought that was pretty cool. But one of the things you guys talked about the sexism, I thought there was something very interesting. Not just the fact that almost everybody was hitting on her and was really enamored with her. There was a thing where there was a whole bunch of she wasn't a human, and there was this implication she wasn't a woman, because Kirk made little comments about, you're not a woman, you're a whatever. And Lawrence Marvick basically said she was a machine. It was completely different. And I wonder if a man had been in that role, would those comments have come out like that?
No. A lot of this would be different if that was a man.
Yeah,
come on.
They would not have been telling Larry Marvick that he was too beautiful to work with Kolos.
Right. Yeah. So they pushed it, but they pushed a lot of that. And I thought that was a little extreme, but the basic concepts of a being you can't comprehend. And I thought I was really fascinated with a natural human telepath. And I remember as a child watching it, it was fascinating because people don't think about this, where she said that she had to intern on Vulcan so that she could learn how not to read thoughts.
Right.
And a lot of times especially when I was a kid, telepathy was almost like the telepaths reached out and grabbed your thoughts. But this is indicating, no, the thought you're broadcasting. So they have to learn how to tune that noise out. I thought that was fascinating.
I also enjoyed that she not necessarily felt threatened by Spock's presence, but that her insecurity, that he could take her place. Like she has this special relationship with Kolos, and here is someone who could replace her. Yeah. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, they're lucky too. I mean, you got to be careful having a telepath on your ship and going through the galactic barrier, because that goes poorly sometimes. So they're skirting danger right there. And like Facebook user points out that they were able to reuse the stock footage, of going through the barrier, and they're a little vague about what's going on. They entered a space-time continuum at some point. It got a little strange, but the point is that the ship was in danger.
And they didn't even need protective bubbles to get through the barrier.
Well, they didn't need to stop and talk about anything.
Well, they didn't need an entire episode to do it either.
This is true. All right.
Sorry, Disco.
Let's move on to Next Generation. Keith, what is the Next Generation episode that we're talking about?
Next Generation is the high ground, the one that is a really thinly disguised allegory for IRA.
Yeah. What does everybody think?
It's weird.
Hey, Matt Sweatman is Facebook user.
Hey, Matt, what's up?
Hey, Facebook user, Matt Sweatman.
Secret identity, Matt Sweatman.
Thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
Okay, so what? Go ahead.
I like this episode because it's season 3, and I like season 3. I thought it's a little heavy-handed. But sometimes I look at shows that you have to think about when they were written. When this was written and when it came out, this was really kind of borderline radical for a science fiction television show. To talk about things like the IRA, to have Finn give that speech to Crusher where he basically says he's no different from George Washington, and she's outraged, and he talks about if you win, you're a general; if you lose, you're a terrorist.
Yeah.
Right.
But I thought it was, it still holds up. It's a little heavy, but I still enjoy it. I love the dimensional shift concepts, which I thought were just fascinating about the show.
I really like that they had a consequence for doing that. 'Cause a lot of the times they do that in science fiction and like there's no consequence, but your body's going into another dimension and then coming back. Yeah. Why is there no consequence?
Yeah, I paused it halfway through this episode. And I told Veronica what they need to do is just give everyone on the ship a phaser and say, if you hear a noise and a flash of light, just stun them. Don't go until they start shooting at you. Everyone is very surprised that people are appearing, and that you're in the 24th century. Like, people appear sometimes. If they don't belong there and they're holding a gun, take action.
That one dude that was walking with the lady, and he stood there and they shot him, and then she darts around the corner real quick. Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
It was very strange, and I also don't understand what they were fighting for. It was like independence.
Yeah.
Separatists. Yeah.
So why is the other side so against it that they are allowing that they continue to fight against it even though there's all this fighting?
Well, I think that's realistic.
So much
I mean,
against it?
I mean, Russia invaded Ukraine this week, and Ukraine has been a country for like 30 years.
Yeah,
you know? Because they feel like that's their land, and Ukraine. They to this day, Russia refuses to acknowledge Ukraine as a sovereign country because it used to be part of the USSR, and historically that land was what they see as their land. I mean, it's the same way. Like, you know, in
this case, the good guys are Russia.
Well, there's no real good guys in
this. No, not really.
You know, like, I mean, I think this episode does a good job of painting everybody's point of view.
Yeah.
You know,
you know what? This episode 35 years ago was so woke.
Why are you pushing your politics on me, man? I just want science fiction.
That's exactly. That's what I meant back then. This was a probably pretty radical and biting episode, because it's really like North Ireland and the rest of Ireland, and whether or not you want to be a member of the United Kingdom. If you look at Ireland, parts of Ireland and Scotland, they had been fighting for independence or agitating for independence literally for centuries. I mean, we look at Braveheart, William Wallace and stuff with Scotland. So it was kind of the same thing. Based on what you're saying, Veronica, it could just simply be they just wanted to have independence. And there's probably all kinds of other reasons. They may have religious differences. They may have other differences. But I think the bottom line was they just wanted to be independent, and they felt like those other people were forcing them.
Yeah.
And I found it very interesting that the Federation came in and was helping the main power, and were instantly seen as abetting them, and it's basically the enemy of my enemy. And Crusher was trying to tell Finn, no, we're just here doing trade and giving them medical supplies. And his point was, if you're helping them, you're our enemy. End of story.
Yeah, basically.
Right. And I think that's the mindset.
The thing about, okay, I have a couple of points. One, they painted Finn to be such a, tough and radical dude, but in order to show him that he has a sensitive side, he sketches. And that's
he's an artist.
That's so cliche.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's pretty good though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it did.
And drawing it for him was pretty good.
Well, but who? At what point in this war that has gone on most of his life did he sit down and actually learn to draw? Just one.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it did lead into a mordantly funny line when she says, "You should be drawing instead of killing," and he goes, "I can do both."
Exactly.
That is a good line.
I did love that.
I think this episode is really well written, and Melinda Snodgrass wrote this. I love her episodes, and she was a big original series fan when she came on to Next Gen. And at one point, Dr. Crutcher says, "We were on an errand of mercy," and I got it.
Yeah, exactly. Matt Sweatman says, unless this is a different Facebook user, says, I wonder if current audiences would relate to the Northern Ireland references.
No. maybe not in the same way,
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, this sort of story is so universal that if this came out now and people would think like, oh, now they're hammering the Ukraine thing, it's because these sort of stories have gone on throughout history. So I think they may not get it as Northern Ireland, but I think this situation, unfortunately, will remain relatable.
Yeah.
Right. Shout out to my native Texas. In Texas, there's always a Texas group that wants to be independent from the United States. So I think a lot of people can identify with that. There was, I will say, as with almost every show where Gates McFadden gets centralized in the show, I'm amazed again what a good actress she is. Because I've seen the show a lot because I really enjoy it. The scene where she's pretty much literally begging Finn not to destroy the Enterprise is tough, because he's basically saying, I'm sorry, your son's on the ship. And to see her as a mother about almost breaking down because he's about to blow up the ship. And fortunately, Geordi had that little cutting tool or whatever and got the thing off the warp drive. That's a really tough thing. And I did like it when he said, I had a son as well. And he was 13 or 14 when he died in prison. And that's the tough thing, is he doesn't want to, but he feels he has to.
Yeah. And I mean, the anger fueling him is all he's got left, so he's fighting for a cause, and his son died, and so there's no stopping him now. He's got nothing else to live for.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, good episode. So one other little thing, and this is very minor compared to the heaviness that we've been discussing, but I feel like Captain Jellicoe could not have got on that show quick enough, because there's a scene where the bad guys show up on the bridge and they start shooting people, and somebody goes down, and Troy runs around to see if he's okay and stuff. And, she's in that big flowy blue dress that's just kind of floating behind her, and she's running in her little high heels. And I'm like, oh my God, why is she not in uniform?
Yes.
It just looks so silly.
Alan, can I comment on that too? Because I made a note on this. I'm glad you said that. There's a couple things I noticed. First off, what is this deal where Worf fires phasers and does photon torpedoes, and then he has to reach over and pick a phaser up off his console and shoot? Because if you realize, he was the security guy on bridge, and then he runs out from behind that big wooden console of his and gets shot. And I have forgotten how much in the Next Generation Worf was pretty much punked a lot. He was not the best fighter. And the other thing is, boy, I miss the original series and even the first season of TNG, where there were security guards on the bridge, especially in crisis situations.
Right.
And I remember scenes in the original series. Remember the security guards would be standing already at attention, but then when they go to red alert, they'd really go to attention. They'd step forward.
They're really ready now.
Yeah, they're really ready. And I'm thinking, you needed security on board on the bridge. That was just insane.
Yeah, and Picard doesn't usually get a lot of action, but he got a good action bit here when he tackled that dude.
Yeah.
So
there we go. Precursor to the movie Picard.
That's right.
Yeah. and one last thing, yet another one of those, for those who remember, who watched this stuff when it was first aired, as I did, another one of those Picard and Crusher saying, if we don't make it out, there are some things I need to say to you. And then you're like, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? I mean, that happened more than once in the series.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately. All right. Well, speaking of that topic, let's go on to our DS9 episode.
Alan's favorite. Heart of Stone.
Heart of Stone. Okay, so I have mentioned a few times, well, probably twice, on previous episodes of ours, that this episode really bugs me, because I just don't like that whole forced romance between Odo and Kira, and I just think it's silly. And this was the worst episode because of that. So having rewatched it this week, it really wasn't that bad.
It's not. And I mean, it helps that it has one of the best B stories in Star Trek.
The B story completely saves this episode.
Yes.
And and it's the thing that makes this an important episode.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about characters on Star Trek being how emotional they are, and how, in some way that's done today as that wasn't done in the old days. But I mean, in this episode, both storylines, you had one of the characters break down crying in a big emotional scene. And I think in this episode, it really works for both Odo and Nog, because I think they put the time in building these characters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So when each of them break down in this episode, I think it really resonates.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So let me ask up front, how many of y'all ultimately did not like the Odo and Kira romance arc, because a lot of people seem not to like it.
For me, Alan? It depends on the episode.
Ah, okay.
Like in the one where he's like bada bing bada bang, is that the one where he's in that one that worked for me? But it does work for me during that arc, during the occupation arc, when he's right. She's desperately trying to get him and communicate with him, and he's is so tied up with the female shapeshifter. You know what happens.
I totally agree with that.
And then also the episode where they find that the Defiant went back in time and Odo's been there for like 200 years. That one really works for me too.
Yeah.
I don't the season 6 episodes that you're talking about though with the Dominion War and all that stuff. I don't see that as romance though. I see that as like tight friendship. Like you know, I don't see that as like I love you and now you're screwing around with the shapeshifter lady.
Right. Well, I think it works because you know going in that they have a little special bit of a relationship. You know what I mean? They're not just it's not Odo and Bashir. You know.
Yeah.
Right. And by then we know clearly that Odo loves Kira, and he's basically trying to use the shapeshifter as a substitute for Kira, physically at least. And then he gets pulled into the Great Link, and that gets him.
My buddy Sharon is watching.
Hey,
hello. Got a question for us? Comments?
She liked it, but I don't know which one it is she's talking about that she liked.
Yeah, let us know which one you liked.
Yeah.
I thought that the thing with Odo and the female changeling was actually pretty good. And as you said, Alan, I like it. I've never disliked it, but I liked it even better this time, kind of watching it. There was a couple of times when she made some references that I wondered about. For example, she said she didn't want to give Julian the chance to basically to brag about his medical ability. And I was kind of wondering how the female changeling got information to know that Julian was going to be so arrogant, because that was her at that time.
Man, she's been watching everything. She's got spies everywhere.
She knows.
I guess so. And it's also interesting. I also wondered if Odo were better at being a changeling, would he have been able to sense that she was a changeling
sooner? I don't know. But I do like Odo's detective skills coming out in this.
Yeah.
Where despite all the emotional turmoil he's going through and his desperation to save Kira, he works it out.
Yeah.
You know, like he figures out that it's not her.
Right.
And I love that they leaned into his detective skills doing that, but also it was a relationship payoff because he knows, like, I know you don't love me. So, or I know Kira doesn't love me, would never say that. So who are you? You know? I love that. Yeah.
One thing I kept thinking, and I've been thinking this ever since I've seen DS9, I write this all the time, is that the changelings have a horrible system of learning about other races, and they brought this on themselves. Because why wouldn't you just what do they say? The drop becomes the ocean becomes a drop. So whenever you create a new being like an Odo, you can't train them for a while in the Great Link and then send them out, because if you think about it, they literally sent all those beings out, forget how many they sent out to do this, with no knowledge of what they were. And the reason that Odo is so fond of solids, and the reason that he doesn't believe in his people or what they're doing, is because he doesn't know his people or what they're doing. And so they set this up for themselves. Yeah, right. That's all he knows.
Yeah. But you could think too that it worked too well, because he really did learn by living amongst humans and solids, and he brought that information back with him.
Exactly. And really big spoilers, guys, for DS9. But at the same time, Charles, the interesting thing is, if you think about it, Odo is the reason the founders were infected, but also the reason that the founders were saved. Because Section 31 was going to kill the founders. And I have to believe that if there were never an Odo, Section 31 still would have found a way to create that virus. And it was Odo who basically was the one who was kind of the emissary. Because without him around to show that compassion, I think Section 31 would have just killed the founders in the story. So in a way, the founders saved themselves, and they were saved by the very compassion that they looked down upon in Odo, which comes much further in the thing. In the series.
Well, all right. Before we get too far afield, let's talk about the B story.
Yes.
Wow, Nog.
I love the turn that Nog's story takes in this. I mean, this is really when he becomes who I think of as earlier. Nog. Hey, I mean, you got early Nog, who's sort of, what the early version of Nog was. But then when you the Nog that I love is later Nog, and I think this is really a turning point here.
Absolutely.
Where, and this could have been a goodbye to him on the show when he eventually joined Starfleet. But I mean, this kicked off some of the best, storytelling of a secondary character in science fiction history, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember when Aaron Eisenberg was at Treklanta, and he was talking about this episode. He thought that he was being written off the show.
Yeah.
So he did think that was what was going to happen.
Wow.
He didn't think he was going to come back after he left.
And this is a big development episode for Rom as well. And I forget that.
Absolutely.
He stood up for him and he's like, no, you're not in charge of my son.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love the really innocent exuberance that Nog showed at first when he goes into Sisko's office and he just puts all the latinum on the desk and he kept shaking his hand all the way through the show, which was really funny.
I love the shaking the hand part.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, it was great. And he just sit there and said, and he babbled on about the Ferengi law and how you basically have to buy a mentor. I thought that was so good. It was just so well acted. And based on what you were saying also, Veronica, I remember that Aaron Eisenberg from pretty much day one was always ready for the axe to fall and him to be released from the show because he was significantly older than Cirroc Lofton. And yet they were supposed to play the same age and best friends. And so he was always worried that one day they were going to say, this doesn't work. You look too old compared to Cirroc. And then, as you said, when he was going to go to Starfleet, he thought they were going to write him out of the show. And then he comes back and has one of the greatest growth arcs in all of Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that the task he gives them to inventory the cargo bay.
Yeah,
it's believable that he does a really good job at it because that's his skill set. That's what he's been doing since probably he could walk and count is working in the storeroom.
Right.
Whereas if it was like realigning the isolinear chips, maybe that wouldn't be quite as believable. or whatever.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I can learn to do that.
Yeah. All right. We want to go ahead and go on to Voyager.
Yes.
Well, so what's our Voyager episode, Keith?
Darkling.
Wait a minute. Let's see what this comment is. DS9 had the best character arcs of any Star Trek series. Well, that is absolutely correct.
Yep.
And pretty much 100% across the board, every single character on DS9 got one of the greatest character arcs in all of Star Trek.
That's actually true. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, main cast, guest characters, every character was so well developed.
Oh, absolutely.
Darkling.
The doctor messes around with his program and becomes evil. Jekyll and Hyde, literally.
And I'm sure I watched this when it aired because I was watching all of them when it aired, but I have zero memory of this episode.
So this is one that I hadn't seen in our.
Yeah, it's nice to go back and watch it.
What a treat for you guys.
Yeah.
There's no real reason for you to have remembered it, really.
Well, yeah. And
I know.
I mean, I had forgotten that they were putting Kes in cat suits by the end. I'm used to Kes in normal outfits. And I was like, wow, even Kes is in a cat suit.
Yeah.
And I thought it was fun. I thought it was fine. It's a Star Trek episode. It's one of our cast members gets to be evil this week.
Yeah.
Right. I do think some of the acting was a little cartoonish.
From who?
Yes.
From Picardo. Who else would it be?
Well, he started out. I remember he started out subtle, and then toward the end, he got more like Lon Chaney or Vincent Price.
Yeah. It's like a Dr. Hyde.
Yeah. He went a little far. Yeah. Right, when he first had B'Elanna in the sick bay, he was really creepy.
I love that.
But later on, you're right. He was all but if he had a mustache, he would have been twirling.
Yeah, he's almost like
little
punching and heavy breathing.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, and I don't know why there's a lot of alien makeups on Star Trek, so I don't know why you'd have a race that looks almost like the Bajorans.
Exactly.
While DS9's on.
Right, exactly. But that reminds me too of the Next Gen episode where basically they're aliens because they don't even have any different facial features. It's just a gray streak in their hair.
Right, that's true.
Yes.
That's true.
That was so lame. But I mean, they got to save money somewhere.
Yeah.
But this one was weird. It was just like like you ordered a Bajoran from Wish.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. and I mean, like I said, it was fine. I don't find this episode objectionable or terrible or anything like that. It was, a Star Trek episode of the week. I do find it interesting that every one of the Voyager episodes that we've done on this 20th, the 40th, the 60th is very much a Kes relationship episode. You have a Lojum where Kes is becoming a woman, and now her adult boyfriend has to decide if he wants to have kids. And then you have the Tuvix one where she's dealing with the fact that Neelix has been Tuvixed, and now you have this where she's 3 years old now and can do what she wants.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And this will be the last Kes that we will be talking about then, right? Because she'll definitely be gone by then.
All right.
Yeah, I thought it was really weird that the doctor mentioned that she might have been rebounding to the new guy because of her breakup with Neelix. It is so weird. Now, the relationship with Neelix was problematical and creepy and just ill-advised, no doubt about it. But it's really weird that everything about their breakup was off-screen. And I mean everything. There was never there was one comment Neelix made later, but there was nothing about them breaking up. All of a sudden, they're breaking up, which is fine, but it was just really weird at the same time.
Matt says, this episode, like most of Voyager, I haven't seen since original airing. Maybe time for a rewatch. Highly encouraged.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So when we were talking about the TOS episode, I wanted to mention how much I absolutely love Diana Muldaur, and I love her in both her TOS appearances and in Next Gen. I've seen her in one or two things outside of Trek, not a lot, but I just love her. So I want to carry that over now by just saying how much I absolutely love Kes.
Yeah,
me too.
Always have. One of my favorite characters on the show, and I was so sad when she left, even though I loved Seven, and and the more she went on, the more I loved her. But I just adored Kes, and there were some very good Kes episodes.
Absolutely.
And I was so sad when she was gone.
Yeah. Jennifer Lean was she was maybe 19 or 20 when she first came on the show.
I thought she was 3.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh, she was 1.
That's
she
true.
Just turned 1.
That's true.
Right, exactly.
She had a presence and a maturity well beyond her years playing Kes. And I'm like you, Alan, I'm very sad that character never worked out. Because I really thought that she added a lot. I think bringing her in as Neelix's girlfriend was in some ways a fatal mistake.
Yep.
At that point in time, and I don't know if they knew how they could ever recover from that, because I thought she was so good and she has so much potential. And her relationship with Tuvok, when her mental powers were developing, was something that could have been explored.
But I don't think it was a case of the character never working out. I thought the character was fantastic. And one of the things that I love about her is that she had that sort of really special relationship with Janeway.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you see some of that in this episode. And it's sort of a motherly, sort of mentoring kind of relationship. And I just love that.
Yeah, I was going to mention that scene where she goes to Janeway and says, I've lived all my life almost on this ship, and and really at that point, why? Because she's not going to Earth. She doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like, so to her, the options are open. Like, well, maybe this is where I get off.
Right.
Yeah.
I did find it kind of sad that. Right. I did find it sad that once Voyager did get home, none of the Delta Quadrant aliens that had been traveling with them made it home with them.
Yeah.
I'm sure that somebody would have liked to have met a Talaxian.
Sure, yeah.
It would have been interesting.
Go to Earth and do press tours.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I thought was weird too, and it almost feels like you said, Charles, it's not an objectionable show, but it feels like, I don't know if it was a rush or if they just wanted to do a Jekyll and Hyde thing, because one of the things that was missing to me at the end was, even though he wasn't consciously responsible for what he did, the things that the doctor did to B'Elanna were pretty horrible. And at the end of the show, she just basically says, "Is there anything else you need?" And he says, "Thank you," with a great contrition. But there was, to me, there was lacking a conversation about what he had really done to her, even though he didn't.
And that happens in Star Trek a lot. Like, if one of my coworkers went crazy or possessed or whatever and tried to murder me, like, you don't just show up to work the next day and be like, "Hey, I'm glad you're back, buddy."
Yes.
I mean, he committed attempted murder. I mean, he pushed a guy off a effing cliff.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you're a hologram and stuff, but my God, there's got to be some kind of address to that situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Janeway didn't even give him a dressing down for altering his program without permission.
Right.
So I thought that was lacking.
I mean, that in itself is a good conversation because, everyone has a chance to better themselves and to educate themselves. And so, he should have that right too. But, so did we ever learn Kessa's fate after she left the ship? No.
I mean, didn't she become an energy being at the end? Something like that?
Yeah. She showed up in a later episode at one point.
The later episode.
Angry Kess.
Oh, I hated that episode so much. Yes. I felt like they ruined my favorite character on the show.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and they sort of jettisoned her in favor of 7 of 9.
Deactivate him for 20 years to life.
But talking about how, on Voyager, and most Star Trek, that those things happen all the time where somebody gets possessed or whatever and tries to kill you.
Right.
But the one who did address that was on DS9. We're talking about how well that show was written when Nog refused to walk behind Garrick or walk in front of Garrick. He wasn't going to turn his back on Garrick because that time Garrick went crazy and tied him up. And he was like, I can work with you, but I'm not turning my back on you again.
Yeah.
That did come up again. So it's possible,
Yeah, true.
It just needs to be really well written.
Absolutely.
That was a very good one. And in the annals of Star Trek people turning evil, then this one is not as good as The Enemy Within, I think. Okay. And I even like Leonard Nimoy playing Enoch in Return to Tomorrow.
Yeah.
When the energy being taken over and he's really kind of hamming up the evil stuff. But I actually like that. I like the first half of the Doctor's performance as evil was good, but toward the end he was really going overboard.
Yeah. Well, to be fair to Picardo, it's usually an opportunity for the actor to ham it up. Yes. It's like Shatner wasn't subtle when he was evil either.
Oh God, no. but there was very little subtlety in the original episode or original series anyway.
Well, I would argue that, but we don't have time.
I know.
That'll be another day. All right,
so a whole topic unto itself.
That's right. Let's move on to Enterprise, Keith.
Enterprise. Twilight. I started to say Memento, but Twilight.
And this one, I think I actually had never seen. I'm familiar with the premise, and I've seen, but I mean, I've told you guys before, I fell off during Enterprise. That's where I got off the train. I stopped watching during season 2, and then I came back for season 3, couldn't get into it, came back again for season 4, but there's gaps in there that I haven't seen. So I was watching this, and I was like, you know what? I've seen screen caps, and I know the basic premise, but I don't know if I've ever sat down and watched this. So that was nice.
What do you think?
I liked it. I mean, I think this premise has been done better on Star Trek before, but I think the actors did well. I mean, it doesn't compare with something like The Visitor, where you get an alternate future, and then trying to change it. But I mean, it's not fair to compare it to The Visitor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Future Imperfect had a similar premise as well, although a different twist at the end.
I love Future Imperfect.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites. But I think this one is important to the season that it's in, the whole Xindi war and all that stuff, because as opposed to the Visitor, is that the one The Visitor, where you see, Jake's life down the road and all that stuff. This, I think, is so important because you're in the middle of this fight to keep this alien race from destroying your home planet. And this shows you exactly what would happen if that were to take place. They come and destroy Earth just like they say they're going to. But what you don't know is that once they've done that, then they hunt down every human they can find, every outpost, every colony, and they wipe it out. So I love this episode because of that, because it shows you that you're fighting, or at least it shows the audience, because the characters don't retain the knowledge, but it shows you that the stakes are even higher than you thought they were.
Yeah. I did like it. I thought Jolene Blaylock was pretty good in this.
Right. Yeah. I think that season 3 and 4 is where she absolutely shines.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think one thing you said, Charles, about liking it, and Alan, what you said, one note I made was, as good as this was, it would have more resonance if you were completely familiar with the Xindi arc.
Right.
Because there's much more excitement there. The other note I made, and I've watched this episode, I've watched this season several times. I guess now we have an unfortunate real life parallel. As I keep going, the Vulcans sat back and did not do a whole lot to help protect Earth from extinction. because they sat back. I mean, T'Pol left the high command to be on the Enterprise, and honestly, they got help from Shran. But the Vulcans, the Andorians, I'm not going to say as much because they weren't the ones who mentored Earth for almost a century, but the Vulcans mentored Earth for a century. And then they knew that a race was bent on destroying the planet and all humans, and the Vulcans never got involved. And I can never understand, is that because, why? Were they afraid of a war with the Xindi? Or was it like Q in TNG where he says to Picard when the Borg are discovered, you said you thought you could handle it, now handle it.
Right.
It's just weird to me that the Vulcans sat back, and you see that even then when Ambassador comes on board the ship, he's telling T'Pol, you need to get out of here because these people are in danger. Nothing like the Vulcans are helping. It's like, you need to get out of here because they're wiping out the humans.
Right.
Yeah.
So Matt says that it sounds like Enterprise really got better after he stopped watching, and Matt, seasons 3 and 4 are phenomenal. So I would encourage you to go watch them after you do your rewatch of Voyager. And I have one little thing to say to Sharon. It's been a long road getting from there to here.
I must be am I the only one in this thing who really likes that? I like it too.
No, I like it.
I like it fine.
Oh, you don't like it?
No. But here's the thing though. So in seasons 1 and 2, it's sort of like the tempo is the same, but the feel is slower and a little bit darker. And it's more orchestral. And then they decided, hey, for season 3, we should change the arrangement of the song, and they make it sort of peppy and sort of dancey as you're going into like the situation where your planet is about to be wiped out of the galaxy. It does nothing at all to
change the music for season 3.
No, they don't, but because they don't for Voyager, but they still did it at a time when the show is getting much darker. And they go lighter with the song, which is stupid.
Yeah, and the song always had that problem. You didn't always get a dramatic sting on Voyager or on Enterprise. You didn't always get a dramatic intro, but when you do, you have that dun dun dun. It's been a lot, and it just it's a shifting tone.
It's so weird.
Yeah,
Sharon, is that an alien language for I love it? Arg.
Exactly.
I thought it was a well done show. I thought, as you said, Alan, I thought Jalene Blaylock did some of her best acting in this episode.
Yeah.
I thought that as much as you're going to do a Memento type of show, they did a really good job. I like the little touches, such as the village or the encampment where Archer and them were living. You could tell they were made out of spaceships, and she even said that later on. And I gotta say, that goes in the top 5 of all Star Trek openings because Archer wakes up, punches out the security guard. He says, I'm supposed to hold you here, runs into the bridge shirtless, and then watches the Earth destroyed. Right. That was amazing opening.
Okay, I had something I remember I wanted to say about Voyager. So we're going to go back to that.
Okay.
Just in time.
I want to know why the heck Kes didn't just grab the hollow emitter and take it off of him.
Yep.
Well, I mean, that's certainly
a
point.
She had plenty of chances.
She had hands.
She had hands. Even when he had her in his hand, she had her other hand to reach there, grab it, yank.
Right. Yeah.
What's he going to do? Nothing. He's gone.
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, Veronica, it's a good thing you're not a scriptwriter because the episode would have been 20 minutes short.
It's a good thing I was not in the episode. I would have fixed that in 2 seconds.
But see, Veronica, when you say that, you bring up an issue I've always had, which is since the hollow emitter can float in space with its own anti-gravity field and etc., the hollow emitter shouldn't be visible on the surface of the Doctor. It should literally be inside his body, so you shouldn't be able to even see it and reach for it. But
like Rimmer.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
But then you can't cosplay with a hollow emitter magneted to your sleeve.
That's why he has an H on his forehead.
Okay, Sharon's really doubling. Sharon's doubly down on this. Theme songs to Star Trek shows should not have lyrics.
Tell that to Gene Roddenberry.
Thank you.
That's how you copyright it.
Unlike the original series. Right. And then Matt says, I really think they wanted to change the openings after previous series with, of course they did. Because everything that they tried to do with Enterprise was to make it its own thing, to make it not be a Trek series, basically, which, to the point of not putting Star Trek in the title for 2 years. But I'm not opposed to the theme song. I'm not opposed, and I kind of like it actually, but I just don't think that I just don't think that the direction that they changed it for season 3 fit the tone of season 3.
Totally agree.
I think especially for first season, it was great because you have that like humanity leaving the solar system for the first time and going out into the unknown to see what all is out there. And that song really captured that. But to stick with it and then to change it into a more poppy sort of like, country pop sort of like, I don't know, it just doesn't fit season 3 at all.
It does not.
It's
I think
so
that was
bad. So bad.
And Alan, everything you said, I agree with and double agree with it, because the more I watch Enterprise, the more I truly love Enterprise, the series.
Love that show.
So I love the theme song. I love the boldness of not having Star Trek in front of the title, Enterprise. If you remember in the original season, they didn't even have things like Scott Bakula as Jonathan Archer. It would just say Scott Bakula. They were trying everything to make it a different show. I love almost everything about Enterprise. Actually, the things I like less about Enterprise are season 4, when they did so many callbacks. Not that I have a problem with the quality. I wanted Enterprise to be its own thing. So as much as I dislike a lot of the Xindi War, I like something new. So I thoroughly loved this episode. I thought it was really, really good. And then when they said they were down to 6,000 humans left in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like less than a city.
Exactly.
You're right.
Absolutely.
Like a small city.
Right.
And what would the future of the galaxy been without the human race? What would have happened with the Vulcans and the Andorians and the Tellarites? And would the Xindi have become more aggressive? And then we also know that way in the future, you were going to have the sphere builders that were going to become a big problem. So destruction of humanity might have really destabilize that quadrant of the galaxy for the future.
Yeah.
I think there should be a whole novel series that's based after this episode, just to explore those very questions.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And plus they settled in the SETI Alpha system, so they wouldn't have lasted more than a century, whatever humans were left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why SETI Alpha 5 instead of SETI Alpha 6, the garden spot?
I don't know. Well, SETI Alpha 5 was the planet Khan was on, and SETI Alpha 6 exploded.
Right. Oh, that's right. So they were on the right planet. Okay, right. No, my mistake. Yeah, I got them backwards, and I kept trying to go over that and over that and over that.
You're worse than Chekhov. It happens all the time, Keith. Don't worry about it.
Baby. I kept expecting Scott Bakula to leap somewhere. The time travel thing.
I would love it if Scott Bakula had leaped. I love Quantum Leap.
I did like the end. I thought they did great Trek action toward the end when the reptilians boarded the ship. Agreed. And all you know is everybody else got shot once or twice and died, and they shot Archer, and then they shot him again, and then they shot him again. I thought that was great dramatic stuff. He held on.
That is called determination.
Yep.
Yes.
I love the ending of that episode.
Me too.
I mean, I know it hits the reset button at the end, but I'm a lot of people are opposed to the reset button thing, and I'm not. I think that being able to tell alternate stories is an important aspect of these kinds of shows.
Well, the reset button doesn't bother. I'm sorry, I just jumped over whatever you were saying. You continue.
No, I was just going to reiterate that I think that this one, even though it is a reset button, does an important narrative thing for this season.
Yeah, and I think it's the reset button isn't as annoying when you're 30 years in the future, because you know it's going to reset. Like no person watching this thought, oh my gosh, the Earth was destroyed and now they're old. What's going to happen next week? You know, like every person watching this episode knows exactly what's going to happen. And that's a downside of the old episodic TV as well.
Sure, I agree.
But you know, but since you know it's going to reset, the more interesting thing is how they're going to do it. Timeless was the same way. I thought Timeless was really good.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's one of the nice things about what Discovery did, is that it did do that big forward leap and no reset button, or at least if there is one, it's not coming until maybe the end of season 5. So it'll be a whole new surprise where it's like, you know, at the end of the episode, we're just going to go back to, you know, and that's one of the things about the Voyager one that I love so much.
Timeless?
No. Oh. The Hirogen one. No. The God, what is it called? The 2-parter, season 4. Oh, never mind. Forget it. Anyway, it resets at the end.
Okay.
You're talking about the Year of Hell?
Year of Hell. Thank you.
Year of Hell.
Yeah.
Which I love those episodes.
Me too. Y'all see the Facebook post? This is CT Alpha 5. I should do my hand and all this kind of weird stuff.
Yeah.
Love disco. Oh, there's a whole other conversation we could have.
The show or the music?
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to break into some Donna Summer.
Excellent episode. I thoroughly enjoyed watching that one. I don't get tired of Twilight. Really, really good episode.
Me too.
Yeah. So how do you think this batch of episodes compares to the previous batches of episodes we've done?
So question I realized as we were sitting here, is there not a 60th episode of Discovery?
No.
Really?
Nope.
But we've been, that's right, because they're short.
They only do 13 a year.
Yeah, they're very short.
That. I was like, but we're into season 4 or 5. I can't remember why these were in season 3. I forgot because they're like a third the size. That's right.
Yeah, they're like half the length of a season. So yeah. I mean, the 60th episode of this, and you have to get like 6 seasons of Discovery to get there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so how do you think this batch of episodes compares to the batches of episodes we've done before?
I didn't know that I was going to have to remember what the previous batches of episodes were, so I can't answer that question.
I feel like we all enjoyed all of these more.
I think so.
I agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think these are stronger. I mean, look at you got the high ground versus that episode with the Embo Jitsu. You know?
Oh God!
Oh yeah.
That's the jumping point we were talking about between the
terrible.
Yeah, in 20 episodes time, and I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That alone answers the question. Then.
Yeah.
I think we like these better.
Although none of them are as good as Tuvix.
No.
Well, I don't know about good, but it doesn't spurn off as much discussion as Tuvix.
Yeah. So, what was everyone's fave episode of this block that we watched?
Ooh.
I'll go Heart of Glass.
Heart of Glass?
Heart of Stone.
Heart of Glass.
I'll just listen to Blondie. I don't know.
Speaking of disco.
Heart of Stone.
Then. See, this is why Keith is introducing the episode title. Go along.
I'm with Chuck.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that because of the Nog?
Of course, it's because of Nog.
It's because of Nog, but I like the Odo storyline. You know, I don't like them much when they're going on dates as a couple. That a couple doesn't work as much for me. But the fact that he has feelings for her and is grappling with that, I just love that whole storyline. I think it works really well.
Cool. I'm going to say Twilight, even though Is There in Truth is so good, and I really love it. Yeah. I think that Twilight is just exceptional.
I agree. Twilight is my favorite. It has just great acting, great action, and guys, y'all listening, they will tell you I am always complaining about how Star Trek has too much time travel, and I always say some of the best episodes in history of Star Trek have been time travel.
Yeah, that's why they keep doing them.
Yeah, I love Twilight. I love everyone. I love seeing Malcolm older with the beard. I love Trip in command. I love thinking about the things like the love affair between Trip and T'Pol is gone because T'Pol is fallen in love with Archer. It's I love the fact of the human race possibly being destroyed. It's a really good episode. And again, since I watched the Xindi arc, it means a lot to me.
You know what? I just thought of a comment that I should have made earlier, but
what's that?
The sad thing about Travis is that he gets killed off at the beginning of this episode, and you don't even notice. Like it doesn't impact the episode at all.
No.
Had T'Pol been killed at the beginning of the episode, you would notice her absence.
Yeah.
Right here. I wrote that.
Travis.
See it right there, Alan. I wrote that. Travis died and nobody said anything.
Travis died, nobody cares.
Yeah. But then the bridge blew up, so everybody died on the bridge.
Oh, right. Hold on.
Yeah, your image. Oh my gosh, was that awesome or what?
Boom!
There you go. That
the
was
first time I watched that episode, I was like, holy cow, the whole bridge is blown up.
You can see inside.
Yes.
I was like, first of all, that's a strong argument for the stupid placement of bridges on these ships.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
That's off topic. So did we get everybody's favorite?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Heart of Stone and Twilight.
Okay. Awesome.
And how about your favorite actor? Who stood out most to you in these grouping of episodes?
Aaron Eisenberg.
Yeah, Aaron Eisenberg was really good. That's a good question.
That is, and
Well, while you guys are thinking, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
For me, the one who really stood out, although I think Diana Muldaur did a phenomenal job, the one who stood out for me was Jolene Blalock.
Yeah.
And
I was torn between those two for my picks.
Yeah. And I think I have a soft spot for Jolene Blalock as an actress, the same way I came to like Jerry Ryan, is they were brought in with obvious intentions to sex up a role. And they're really good actors. And Jolene Blalock, the subtlety, as you mentioned, Alan, especially in 3 and 4, the subtlety that she starts portraying as a Vulcan, and the subtlety she starts portraying as a Vulcan who has feelings for Trip. And then she has she has so many issues with the enforced mind meld that gives her issues. And then when she gets exposed to the Trillium D that gives her basically a drug addiction. She's a really, really good actress. And in this episode, the emotion and the feeling she has, she's basically in love with Archer. And thinking about every day she has to tell this man that Earth was destroyed every single day.
Right.
And also she's in love with him. So I thought she did a phenomenal job. So she stood out for me with Aaron Eisenberg a close second.
Yeah. And so since you went with Jolene and I was torn between the two, I'm going to go with Diana Muldaur. I just think she's amazing. And I loved her in that episode. And I thought that she brought such a really like serene sort of complexity to that character that I really loved.
She's a good actress.
Yes, she is. She was the president of the Screen Actors Guild for quite a long time.
Alan, what you say reminds me of a quote I saw at Diana Muldaur. This was probably in the years when she was on LA Law. And she
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and she was talking about one time she had just, something was going on, might have been an upcoming anniversary of Star Trek, the original series. And she said she hadn't watched the original series episodes since she'd done them. And when she looked at them, she said she was pleasantly surprised at how good she felt she'd done in the two episodes she appeared in.
That's pretty rare for an actor to say that.
I agree.
Yes.
I think she's wonderful in both of those episodes.
I do too. She has a great presence about her.
Yeah. For my favorite of the actors this week, I'll say Rene Auberjonois, because I think that he did a great job not only playing Odo being Odo, but Odo desperate and increasingly desperate and trying to save Kira and then working it out and then confessing his feelings. And I think he took Odo through a gamut, and often Odo is very gruff and to the point. So it was great to be able to see him just break out of that and really play Odo in anguish.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Good pick.
I agree. And then sometimes it's the exact same thing, but it's not, because you can have your favorite actor, but your different scene. What would be your most memorable scene in the block? To something that just stood out to you?
Oh, well, I think we're all going to pick the same one.
Yes.
Are we?
When Nog puts the money on the table.
No. Oh, okay. We're not
okay.
The same
Go
one.
for it.
Because I was going to say it's Nog telling telling Cisco that whole, like, spitting out that whole reason for why he wants to go to Star. That was so good.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's a. Yeah, I would think the most
great, but the nice thunk. It's not the scene; it's that image, that sound.
Yeah.
And folks, that's a Ferengi. That's someone who loves Ferengi. So for Veronica, that was a quintessential Ferengi moment.
I said the most memorable for me is the crazy, because I remember this since I was a kid. The crazy fisheye lens going crazy on the bridge scenes when everyone's arms are extra long. That sticks in your mind when you see that when you're 10 years old.
That's true. That's true.
And that's so far out of field from what Star Trek usually had done, the original series. Because, I mean, early in the series, you had very creative directors that tried unique camera angles and unique camera tricks.
Yeah.
But they always went over budget and got fired and never came back. And so you have the workmanship direction for a lot of the show where you don't see the roof of the bridge. You don't see a lot of interesting camera tricks. Right. And then in this episode, you do. Ralph Sineski, for whatever reason, just got to go nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that the first time they were ever in engineering?
No.
Okay.
This is season 3. They've been engineering plenty of times.
I don't remember seeing that that particular shot.
Engineering?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they've been engineering. Oh, you talking about from up top, or you just engineering at all?
Like from up top and being able to see that giant.
Oh no, you'd seen that before, but a unique shot in this is when you go into the bridge and you're looking up and you can see the bridge dome. Yeah, and you don't often get to see that bridge dome.
Right.
And
exactly.
And they also positioned the camera from over near. I think the camera was at one point was positioned from near Spock's science station, looking back the other direction.
Yeah. That's right. I noticed that too.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Loved it.
I can't be too original, but I'm gonna have to agree. And I have a tie. The most memorable dramatic scene was Nog's confession to Cisco that he doesn't want to be like his father, and that this just really heartfelt scene. And then the other one for me, Charles, the tie for the one that was kind of silly was when Miranda was trying to bring Spock's mind back, and she's reaching over, and her arms get real long, and his arms get real long, and then they show these weird angles up on her face, and then they show Carlos's box. I mean, I watched this show as a child, and let's just say at that time I was also watching things like the Monkees, H.R. Puffin stuff, Sigmund and the Sea Monster, the Bugaloos, and this just fit right along because it was a real trip, man.
But you know, they did some fisheye lens.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say they also did some fisheye lens tricks in First Contact, and that was a movie in the '90s. So I mean, it's a trick that works.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Alan.
I was just going to say that Keith just named my entire childhood television watching.
Yes, it was all of that.
Why did Spock have to wear the little visor when he's transporting the box and the girl in and out?
Well, I think he was expecting Carlos to just beam up,
but she was wearing it too.
Yeah, I know that. So
I guess for safety. So if that box opens, you gotta be prepared
in case the box doesn't materialize.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
If it falls over, I don't know.
I'll buy that for $1.
Well, and at the end, was Spock doing kind of an emotional thing where he put the visor on for a second when he beamed them out, and then he took it off?
I think so.
Yeah.
Assuming this is still Matt. This is exactly a point that I had intended to make when we were talking about the episode, and I forgot to.
Me too.
That season 3 does catch a lot of flack, and I was so happy to see a third season episode that we could feature this week. That's so good, and is sort of a, because you always think spectacular first season, a really strong second season, and then season 3. But and other than like Enterprise Incident, I was so glad to see a season 3 episode that's really, really good. So I'm glad we got to talk about this one.
Like the Impasse.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know, Keith.
And I want to point out that the IDIC, which is still a big symbol for Star Trek, is introduced in this episode.
I forgot about that.
The infinite diversity and infinite combinations is something that's, I mean, that they harp on that a lot through social media, and that's the philosophy of Star Trek. And that also it only exists because Gene Roddenberry wanted to sell replicas to Lincoln Enterprises.
Of course.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. Well, real quickly, we have one more thing we're going to say. So real quick, as we're hitting an hour, was looking back on these shows that remind you of the old Trek and the older Trek, how does that compare, you think, to the new Trek? Have things changed so much so that it doesn't feel like Trek now? Are the differences in how they treat subject matter so great that you feel the old Trek is not even as relevant in some ways? I don't feel that way.
Oh, well, I don't think any of us.
It's like comparing any sci-fi of the 90s to any sci-fi of today.
The 90s, she says.
I know, I thought that too. I'm thinking 60s.
I think most of these were like 90s, early 90s to very 80s.
80s.
I think a lot of the character stuff I like better the way they did it back then. I think, like, for instance, we talked a lot this season on Discovery about a lot of emotional scenes, and a lot of talking scenes, and you have both of those in Heart of Stone. But I think they resonate better because you have more time, you have more episodes with the characters. So when Nog starts crying and Odo starts crying and have breakdowns, I think it really works. But also it really works because it doesn't happen 4 times in every episode. Yeah. It's a rare, when Odo breaks down crying, you're watching the screen because Odo doesn't break down crying.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right. I think another big difference is that is the pacing. In the 60s, you had an A story, and it wasn't called an A story because it was just a story. Right. In Next Gen, the one that we watched, is basically one plot. You get A and B stories later on, but then in the modern shows, a lot of times you have an A, B, C, and D story.
Agreed.
We have had Discovery episodes where there has been 4 plot lines going on. And in addition to the pacing and the lack of time that you get with each character, that's what you've got so much going on that you can't really divest time into every one of them and have every one of them come out satisfactorily, I guess. Yeah, and that's not necessarily criticism, because I do love Disco. You all know that, but that is a big difference.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff that they're cramming into each episode.
Yeah,
I think so too, and I agree with that too, because the original series episodes especially were much longer. It was several minutes longer than they are nowadays. But at the same time, they also tended to have just one plot, so they're much more densely written. And also, and this may sound like a prejudice, I hate saying things like this, but I also still feel that in a lot of ways, I don't think writing on Star Trek has ever really hit the same stellar heights as the original series in a lot of ways. And I think some of that is because so many of the people like Roddenberry and all these people, they were television writers, and they'd grown up on certain types of dramas and dramatic movies, and they had so much input from people like Robert Bloch, and some of the same people who worked on the original series worked on Outer Limits and Twilight Zone and Planet of the Apes and World War II movies. And there's a type of dramatic depth that the original series has that I don't know that they've really captured as well since then, in my personal opinion, that I like. And married to the better pacing, in some ways, it still feels like a more satisfying experience, even when they are still dealing with weird things like all the sexism that they still had in the 60s.
Yeah. To give you an example of something I think the new shows do better is if, like, for instance, tomorrow, if Earth explodes on Discovery, I believe them. I don't think they're going to go back in time and change it.
Yep.
Agreed.
Whereas
Agreed.
in the 90s, if Earth explodes, like, okay,
right,
how do they get out of this one?
Right.
Earth's going to be better by next week,
It's going to be better.
I mean, back then, you didn't kill off your main character, so if one of them got hurt,
right.
no, they're going to be fine. They're going to be back next week. It's fine. They're not going to kill off the main characters, main ship.
Right.
I mean, even like the B characters, they're not going to kill them off for the most, usually.
Unless it's a contract problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts about that before we wrap it up?
This was fun. Enjoyed every one of them.
This was fun. Let's do it again at 80.
Then we will. We will.
Awesome.
About 20 weeks from now, we'll be doing this again.
So the original series drops out then.
That's true.
It does.
Yeah.
We miss it by 1 week.
Yeah. Gosh.
And so we're down fascinating, isn't it? Maybe we should just do the 79 ones then.
That's what I was going to say. We should.
I think it's good that
the
they pop off.
The last one of...
Because I'm not going to try that hard to include the Turnabout Intruder.
No, that's true. You have a good point there.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and for everybody who joined us in the chat. Now, this will be going out as well on our podcast, not this coming Monday, but the following Monday. So if you liked it enough to listen to it too, that's going to be your opportunity. Now, if you're watching on the screen, you may notice that Alan and I are twinsies tonight. We have matching shirts on, and if you want to match us too, check out the ESO Podcast Network TeePublic account, because this logo is available on a t-shirt, and I think you can get it on other things also. I haven't looked into that, but
there's tons of stuff.
Can't you get it on mugs?
You can get it on any color shirt.
Yeah.
It's
so
really
you
cute
can have
on a purple
Earth Station
shirt.
Trek the t-shirt, Earth Station Trek the beach towel, Earth Station Trek the coffee mug. It's all there for you.
Oh, baby. That's
all right.
funny.
Alan, where can people find more of you on the internet?
Well, I have another podcast on the Earth Station One network called Modern Musicology. It explores pop and rock music from the 70s, 80s, 90s, some 60s, some aughts. We go into all kinds of things. Our next episode, we're going to be talking about our 5 favorite opening tracks. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a countdown. We've got a guest coming on. It's going to be fun. And then I also have my little publishing company called cosmicpress.com, KOZMICpress.com. Go visit and buy a book.
And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter and on the Facebook groups, primarily ESO Network Facebook groups.
And how about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
Yep.
And can we make the announcement now?
Not yet.
What? There's an announcement?
Yep. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
We don't have a release date yet, but go ahead.
We don't have a release date yet, but we're hoping for it to be up next week. So we have a Monkeys podcast coming out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
and who's the host of this podcast?
I am the host.
Veronica is hosting a podcast.
Along with Chuck and Elaine Sweatman.
Yep.
We have started a Monkeys podcast. We've recorded 2 episodes. Hope to have one out next week before we go on our cruise that includes the remaining monkey.
That way, if we get lost at sea, you'll have that one to listen to.
Yes.
and what's the episode? What's the podcast called, Veronica?
Monkeying Around.
Yep. So if you search for Monkeying Around on Facebook and Twitter, you can find it now.
Yeah.
And Yeah, well, we should have episode. We hope to have one out in the next week, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
that is fantastic. I'm so excited,
Awesome.
and I can't wait for you to invite me on as a guest.
Yep. And Keith mentioned that he watches the monkeys when he was a kid too, so he's going to get roped in at some point as well.
Yep.
Yeah. It's been a while, but yeah.
We can just have an Earth Station Trek
monkeys
episode.
Hey, we could do a crossover. Talk about check.
Look, we had a comment that just flashed by, didn't we?
Oh, what was it?
Hang on.
Oh, there was a flamethrower.
Oh, there's a hi. I don't know who that is.
Is that Matt? Hey, Matt.
It was probably
No.
Elaine typing on Matt's
Probably
computer.
so.
Maybe so.
And so one of the two of them says yay.
Yay.
And then it was a Earth Station Trek, the flamethrower.
That's
if that's
another
on,
product that has our logo on it.
I don't think
we're
they
working
have
on
that
Oh, okay, cool.
But you can get a sticker and put it on a flamethrower.
Hey,
See, there you go.
Good.
You just buy stickers and you can turn anything into a
Elaine says hi, and hi, Elaine. You can hear
Elaine
on monkeying around with us when that episode comes out, hopefully in the next week.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So the first 2 episodes, can you tell us what the 2 topics are, or would you rather us not know?
No, well, the general getting to know you questions. How do you find the monkeys? Some favorites. It's kind of like what we did when we were starting out the Earth Station Trek. Getting to know who we are and where we're coming from. And then we're gonna plow forward after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right. You have a closing for us, Veronica?
I had one. Alan said it, and I can't remember what it was.
Did I?
Yeah, you said something that was really funny, and
You're just gonna repeat that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Quick, Alan, what was funny that you said?
I don't know. It was something about
everything I say is a comedic gem.
It was something about making a copy of something and it being there. I don't know. It was really funny.
Earth Station Trek, the flamethrower.
There you go.
Pew pew.
You can always just default back to meow.
There you go.
A madman got us into this, and it looks like only a madman can get us out of this.
Perfect.
Boom. All right. So thank you, everybody, for watching. We're out of here. See you around the galaxy somewhere. Make sure you like and subscribe to our Facebook page, our Twitter, our other places, whatever those places may be. And we will see you very, very soon. Take care. Have a great night. And
later.